I'm Dom Nicholls, and this is Ukraine, the latest. Today, as reports come in of a renewed Russian cross-border offensive in the northeast of the country, Ukraine is clearing up after another massive overnight aerial attack, which has left thousands without power. We report the diplomatic fallout from the inconclusive talks in Miami, and later we have an interview with Ukrainian artist and designer Mariya Dykalo, the creative director of Aspinal of London.
Bravery takes you through the most unimaginable hardships to finally reward you with victory.
Russia does not want peace.
Erstens, wir verteidigen mit unserer Hilfe für die Ukraine auch unsere Freiheit und unsere europäischen Werte.
If I'm president, I will have that war settled in one day, 24 hours.
We are with you, not just today or tomorrow, but for 100 years.
Nous ne pouvons pas, comme Européens, laisser gagner la Russie en Ukraine.
Nobody's going to break us. We're strong. We're Ukrainians.
It's Tuesday, the 23rd of December, 3 years and 304 days since the full-scale invasion began. And today I'll be handling both the military and diplomatic updates. I'll start with the breaking news from northeast Ukraine. Around 100 Russian soldiers entered the village of Hrabovsky in Sumy Oblast and attempted to push west. This comes from Viktor Tregibov, who's head of the Joint Forces Communications Department. He was speaking to Aspinal earlier today. Hrabovsky, you'll remember, it's that village that lies on the border with Russia's Belgorod Oblast, about 50 k's southeast of Sumy city in the northeast of Ukraine. We reported yesterday that a smaller number of Russian soldiers seemed to have come across the border and were fighting in and around the village. It looks like that effort has continued, and they've been backed up by up to 100. So not huge numbers, but they are increasing their numbers there. Mr. Tregibov said Russian units are currently consolidating their positions in the southern part of Hrabovsky. It's a small village, so there's not an awful lot to the southern part. He didn't say that last bit, sorry. He said Ukrainian forces are trying to dislodge them from their positions. Fighting continues in the village. The attack by Russian forces was sudden, he said, adding that 52 civilians were taken by Russian forces yesterday over the border into Russia. We reported at the time 50. We said that it was mainly elderly. I have seen reports this morning that children were also taken, although that's not been confirmed anywhere else. I've not seen it backed up anywhere else. We will continue to keep our eyes on that, and if it develops over this next hour, I'll bring you an update at the end. Elsewhere, overnight, a massive Russian missile and drone attack across most of Ukraine last night has left thousands without heat, power or light this morning. So far, 3 people have been reported killed and another 12 injured, but those numbers are expected to rise. Energy infrastructure was specifically targeted. Rivne, Ternopil and Khmelnytsky oblasts in the country's west are, quote, almost completely without electricity, says the Energy Ministry. It's the second night in a row that Rivne has been targeted. Now, Lviv Oblast Governor Maxim Kozitsky said a critical energy infrastructure facility had been hit there. Still in the western regions, and explosions were also reported in Ivano-Frankivsk Oblast. That comes from public broadcaster Suspilna. They also reported blasts in the outskirts of the city of Cherkasy in the centre of the country. Odessa Oblast was hit hard again, with energy, port, transport, industrial and residential infrastructures damaged. This comes from Governor Oleg Kipa. And then in the north and northeast of the country, in Chernihiv and Sumy Oblast, Russian attacks damaged critical civilian infrastructure there too. President Zelensky said Russia had launched more than 650 drones and over 3 dozen missiles targeting what he said was the entire infrastructure of life. Emergency power outages have been implemented in several regions across the country, according to the Energy Ministry, who said as soon as the security situation allows, rescue teams and energy specialists will begin addressing the consequences of the attack to restore electricity supply in the regions as quickly as possible. Now, Ukraine's Air Force said 587 of 635 drones were destroyed, as well as 34 of 38 missiles. The head of the comms department for Ukraine's Air Force said F-16 aircraft today effectively shot down almost all missiles. Out of 35 launched, 35 were intercepted. So that individual was saying 35 missiles were launched. The Ukraine's Air Force elsewhere said 38. But regardless, they both said 34 had been brought down, mostly by F-16 by the look of it. Now, UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Fund, said in a Twitter post, tragic reports of 1 child killed and 3 injured in Kyiv, Vyshhorod and Zhytomyr in another wave of attacks across Ukraine. Children are facing another difficult, terrifying winter. Young lives threatened. Heating, power and water disrupted. End attacks. Let children be children again. Now, as you know, I often bash the United Nations for their efforts, so I did check. After seeing that by UNICEF, I checked the main UN website. And fair enough, there is a story on their main page titled "Weekend Attacks in Ukraine Bring More Casualties, Damage Infrastructure." Now, I read that report. There is one important word not mentioned anywhere in the article. Can you guess what the word is? Russia. No mention of Russia in that report. So good, but guys, come on. Put a link in the episode notes. You can have a look for yourself if you don't believe me. Now, in the last couple of hours, the Kyiv Post is quoting the Energy Ministry as saying all of Ukraine's nuclear power plants have cut electricity output after those overnight strikes last night, raising the risk of power disruptions in the coming hours. Now, I mentioned it late in this update. I've not seen that quote anywhere else. I've looked at the Energy Ministry, not seen it backed up anywhere on the Kyiv Post main site. So treat with caution, but that would be significant if all the nuclear power plants have been taken offline. President Zelensky said this morning this Russian strike sends an extremely clear signal about Russia's priorities, an attack ahead of Christmas when people simply want to be with their families at home and safe. An attack carried out essentially in the midst of negotiations aimed at ending this war. Putin still cannot accept that he must stop killing, and that means that the world is not putting enough pressure on Russia. Now, in comments last night, President Zelensky predicted Russia was going to ramp up aerial attacks over Christmas. We have mentioned this on the pod, but drone and missile numbers have been down in recent days, suggesting they were stockpiling munitions. But last night, President Zelensky said it is their nature to make some kind of massive strike on our Christmas. We are again raising the issue of air defence and the protection of our communities, especially on December 23rd, 24th and 25th. However, yesterday, Russian Defence Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov rejected a possible temporary ceasefire for Christmas that President Zelensky said was suggested by the US administration. So Mr. Ryabkov said, "We are not for a temporary ceasefire. We are for a sustainable cessation of hostilities within the framework of an agreement that will ensure the resolution of problems that are the root causes of this conflict, and that will guarantee Russia's constitutional, taking into account the decisions, Yeah, okay, fine. You don't need to hear all that rubbish. Now, it's funny that Russia is all in favour of a temporary ceasefire when it suits them, such as over the May Day parade earlier this year when Putin asked for a ceasefire as he was scared that Ukrainian drones were going to ruin his day. But then they say something completely different a little while later. And yet they want us to believe them when they say, as Mr. Ryabkov also did yesterday, that Russia is ready to legally formalise its intention not to attack European Union or NATO states in any future peace deal. That's good enough for me. If they say they're going to put into law that they're not going to attack, they must be serious, because we all know how much this lot just love the rule of law and stick to their word. Now, on the ground, no real move other than that push in the Sumy region, but the situation near Seversk in the Donbass is, quote, extremely difficult as Russian forces continue to attempt to cross the Seversky Donetsk River. This comes from Ukraine's 7th Air Assault Corps speaking yesterday. Now, that river in this part of the country runs roughly east-west, a few kilometres north of the city of Seversk. I think Russian forces, when I've looked at the map there and looked at the topography, I think Russian forces trying to get across the river in order to rebalance the line there as they continue to try to push west and avoid the forested area, which forms a natural obstacle to the northwest of Seversk. They are trying to push west towards Sloviansk, although that is still 30 kilometres away. The comment on the telegram by 7th Air Assault Corps, when they say it's extremely difficult, refer to the village of Serebianka. That's about 20 k's northeast of Seversk. Now, they say it's extremely difficult. The deep state map, which is a reliable indicator of dispositions, albeit open source and albeit maybe a day or two behind reality, suggests that Serebianka was captured by Russia a week ago. So, as always, major health warning about all this reporting when we're trying to say who's where and where the line is. It is all very confusing. So do cross-reference what we say with others. Have a look for yourself. But yeah, it is very, very confusing to say exactly who is where. However, the 7th Air Assault Corps said, quote, units of the 81st Brigade are holding their positions, inflicting losses in manpower and equipment on the enemy. Russian forces are also continuing attempts to transport personnel across the Seversky Donets River from the side of the Serebryanka forest. Now, that unit posted drone videos and claimed that 2 boats, together with personnel, have been destroyed trying to cross the river. Now, a little to the north, and a video released by Ukraine's 92nd Armoured Brigade, thought to come from the Kharkiv area, shows 2 Russian soldiers targeted by drones while crossing a field on horseback. Now, in this clip, there's a Russian soldier seen galloping along as a drone tracks his movement. Moments later, the drone strikes, hitting the soldier as he attempts to escape. The explosion spooks another horse, which unseats its rider before charging it in another direction. In a statement, the brigade said the Russian occupiers are losing equipment so quickly during their meat assaults that they are forced to move on horseback. But even that doesn't help them. The drone operators of the 5th Assault Battalion of the 92nd Air Armoured Brigade minus the enemy as soon as they see the target. The word minus there is a reference to reducing the number of Russian soldiers, i.e. making them casualties, in this case killing the individual that was hit by the drone, I would imagine. The video only shows one blast, from which I doubt the horse survived as well. And Francis has covered the role of animals in war before, and he will do again. They get no choice. Okay, another story. Ukrainian drones reportedly struck the Stavropol petrochemical plant last night in Russia in the Budyonnovsk area of Stavropol Krai. That's about 600 kilometers east of the Kerch Bridge. This comes from Russian Telegram channels. There are posts from local residents of photos and videos showing large flames coming from the direction of the plant. Certainly the images I've seen on social media show huge fires, not just venting off gas. That's apparent. So not all the flames that you see in these kind of sites are always from blasts. Some of it is gas being burnt off. But the enormous explosions and the fire over the rest of the facility clearly isn't as the designers intended. Now, just to finish on this little section for the diplomatic stuff, I'll point you to an article from Miyamoto, the global engineering and disaster management firm that warns of a looming asbestos crisis in Ukraine. And thanks to Leslie in Bucha for pointing me towards it. Now, Leslie says that about 60% of homes in Ukraine use asbestos, especially for roof tiles. And because of the amount of destruction since Russia's invasion, people are now being exposed to cancer-causing fibres. The article from Miyamoto says, quote, the asbestos contamination resulting from the conflict in Ukraine presents a significant long-term health risk that must be addressed alongside immediate reconstruction needs. By implementing comprehensive asbestos management strategies, raising awareness, and engaging diverse stakeholders, Ukraine can mitigate this hidden hazard and ensure a safer future for its citizens. The international community's support will be crucial in this endeavour, helping Ukraine to not just rebuild, but to build back safer in the face of this environmental challenge. Put a link to it in our episode notes, but I'll be very keen if anyone's from the sort of building sector and in Ukraine able to give us some sort of details on how big the scale of this problem could be. It sounds like it could be absolutely huge. Now then, on to the main diplomatic updates. Not many, but basically where are we after those 3 days of talks in Miami over the weekend? Those talks between US, Ukraine and Russia, although not trilateral. It was US with Ukraine, US with Russia. It was not Ukraine and Russia speaking direct. Well, on these talks, President Zelensky said last night, our negotiating team is now returning from Miami. They will arrive at night and I will have the details in the morning, i.e. today. He said, in my view, everything possible that we needed to do for the initial draft has already been done. There are 20 points of the plan. So the US-Ukraine plan is now a 20-point peace plan. President Zelensky said, not everything is perfect so far, but this plan is in place. There are security guarantees between us, the Europeans, and the United States. He called it a framework paper. He said there is a separate document between us and the United States, bilateral security guarantees. They must be reviewed by the US Congress, with certain details and annexes remaining classified. As of today, this all looks quite solid and dignified. For now, however, these are working drafts prepared by our military. Importantly, they have been developed by us and by the United States of America. This indicates that we are very close to a real outcome. We are also developing the first draft of the agreement on Ukraine's recovery and economic strategy. Just to finish, he said, the core of all documents is ready. There are certain things we are not prepared to accept, and there are things, of that I am sure, that the Russians are not prepared to accept either. The Americans are currently continuing negotiations with Russian representatives. They will hold talks and then we will receive feedback from them. From our side, they have received all the information. So it sounds like Ukraine is content with the Miami outcome. We already know that Russia poured cold water on it yesterday, but what of the US? Well, not sounding so good, I would venture. US Vice President J.D. Vance said yesterday, "I think that we've made progress, but sitting here today, I wouldn't say with confidence that we're going to get to a peaceful resolution. I think there's a good chance we will. I think there's a good chance we won't." Right. I'm trying to make things just a little bit clearer. Mr. Vance then said negotiations have yet to resolve certain issues. First, the future of Ukrainian-controlled parts of Donetsk Oblast. Now note that phrase, Ukrainian-controlled parts. So not the parts that have been captured by Russia, implying that J.D. Vance still sees Ukraine as having to negotiate over land that Russia has failed to take in 4 years of war. That, as we know, is the reddest of red lines for Ukraine, which is the main reason I say these current so-called peace negotiations are going to go nowhere. But I will relay the other news anyway. Also to be discussed, according to J.D. Vance, the control of the Russian-occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the status of Ukrainian civilians in Russian-occupied territories and ethnic Russians in Ukraine, and the post-war reconstruction of Ukraine. Mr. Vance then said Russia, quote, really wants to control all of Donetsk Oblast, but accepted that would understandably pose a major security problem for Ukraine. I think that is a case of saying the quiet part out loud. So I'm not hugely optimistic. I think at the moment, Ukraine seem happy with the working document, but given the situation that we've been discussing for many, many weeks, if Ukraine are happy, then Russia will not be. And I think it all comes down to, as J.D. Vance said, the future of Ukrainian-controlled parts of Donetsk Oblast, otherwise known as Ukraine. Anyway, okay, the last one on the diplomatic front for me, a decision on the future of the Czech-led initiative supplying Ukraine with artillery ammunition will be taken at a meeting of the Czech Republic Security Council on January the 7th, new Prime Minister Andrej Babiš said yesterday. The initiative, you'll remember, the Czech initiative, whereby they take the lead. They're not funding the whole thing. Funds come from other international partners and supporters, but it's the Czech Republic that sort of do the administrative lead and liaise with industry, etc., etc. That delivered 1.5 million artillery shells in 2024 and aims to supply up to 1.8 million by the end of this year. However, the whole thing's been thrown into doubt by the election of Andrej Babiš, who has been vocal in his opposition to continued support for Ukraine. On the election trail, Mr. Babiš vowed to scrap this programme, calling it overpriced and complaining that it lacked transparency. Yesterday, Mr. Babiš said, in principle, the ammunition initiative has certainly been a good thing. The question is whether it has occurred without corruption. Haven't heard that before, but that may be the off-ramp that he's eyeing up. Fresh from donning his glad rags for the recent deep dive into Ukrainian fashion, Francis recently spoke to Mariya Dykalo, a Ukrainian artist and designer and creative director of Aspinal of London. She's been there for a decade. They discuss how communism approached the subject of fashion, some of the distinct features of Ukrainian design, and then the story of a scarf she designed with Ukrainian children that was gifted to Melania Trump while on a state visit to the UK. This is their conversation.
So it was 2 years ago I was invited to St. Mary's Ukrainian School in London to do a creative workshop with children. And for me, as I'm Ukrainian, and it's wonderful to meet the children. And I was a teacher for a day, so I ran 4 classes, and there was Ukrainian children, displaced children who came to London, to England when the war started, and children from 5 to 10 years old. And I asked the children to draw their dreams. And it's so wonderful for them to be able to reconnect, because through art, it's like a therapy. It's not just a drawing. They're able to process their feelings, their emotions, and something which they can't really say it. And you can see on the scarf so many wonderful dreams. Some of them want to be Olympic gymnast or footballer or meet Harry Potter. But most of the dreams, they want to have peace in Ukraine, to go back to their homes, homes to go and be reconnected with their grandparents and their pets. So through all this day, it was a very beautiful day. Children was very positive and very happy at the time. Of course, some children telling some emotional stories about their house being bombed, and so a lot of children draw their homes and houses as well. But after all this day, I took all their drawings home and I collaged them in a big background of the blue globe, like a blue planet. And around, I created the yellow orb. It's like blue and yellow. It's colors of Ukrainian flag. And the whole entire artwork been donated to school, St. Mary's Ukrainian School.
I've seen it hanging up on the wall.
Have you? Mm. Yeah, thank you. Because I think it's important when children all the time, when they go back to school, they can see their dreams and they can continue the dreams, because I believe our thoughts, our dreams, it's so important to dream, not just for children, for all of us, because the dreams materializing. And I think for these children, it's so important to never lose the hope about they can come back to their countries, they can be reconnected with their pets, with their family, and fulfill their dreams. They must follow their dreams. It's so important. And then, of course, being a designer at Aspinal of London, I was able to create the scarf with the artwork. And currently the scarf called We Can Dream Again. It's online at Aspinal of London website, so anyone who would like to support the school. And it's important also through this initiative to tell the story about incredible work the teachers doing at St. Mary's Ukrainian School in London for children, because they give the children community. A lot of children need therapy, or they learn about their language, tradition. So it's a great teacher. I met all of them. They all very passionate. So the profit, or 100% of profit of the sales of the scarf, we donate to the school. And as you mentioned, last September, 10 Downing Street approached me as an artist, and they wanted to hear about the story about the scarf and the artwork and the children who created this work. And Lady Victoria Stammer, they wanted to give to First Lady of US the scarf which created by Ukrainian children, which is wonderful. And I think it's a very important message. And when First Lady of US come back home in US, she did good speech about children dreams, which she mentioned, the Ukrainian children which been stolen by Russia. And you know, if this work and this gift give the right message and even say one child, I'm really grateful for everyone who was helping, and it's wonderful to be able to be part of this support for children for Ukraine.
Well, I remember us reporting on the speech at the time, and actually the state visit as well when the scarf was given over. It's beautiful, and I'd say perfect, given the profits going to St. Mary's School. It's wonderful in this festive season. But I wanted to ask, when you put this together, what was the feedback from the children themselves when they saw the full work?
Yeah, of course, their faces so lit up, seeing their smiles, and when they're looking at the artwork, they try to find their drawings. And also every child, they sign their name. So I try to attach the children's names, so they always try to find the name. And it's a mixed emotion, it's beautiful, and yeah, it's wonderful. They're able to reflect their dreams through this wonderful, genuine, beautiful work. Yeah.
Well, let's go and talk more broadly about Ukrainian fashion. It's a subject that I've done a deep dive on for the podcast recently and wrote about for The Telegraph. Not a world that I knew particularly well, to be honest, before a full-scale invasion, but now I've gleaned a little bit more understanding of it. You were born and raised in Lviv in the West. Perhaps you can talk a little bit about the fashion there compared to other parts of Ukraine, and then more broadly about the Ukrainian fashion scene.
Yes, I was born in a beautiful city, Lviv, which is west of Ukraine, and it's some people call this mini Paris. And the Lviv has been established in the 13th century, and luckily during Second World War hasn't been bombed. So the architecture is absolutely beautiful. We have Gothic architecture, Secessia, Rococo, Baroque. And it's very interesting. 22 years ago, when I left Ukraine, when I came to England, I was dreaming, walking my cities. I realized I miss my city so much. So after the war, please would love to invite everyone because it's a beautiful city. And also we have a lot of incredible universities, theater, the most beautiful opera theater. So I was in Lviv. I graduated Academy of Art. So I specialized in leather accessories and graduated Academy of Art with master on fashion and design. And so at that time, I was actually growing in Soviet Union. So the Soviet Union era is very interesting because all the fashion shop or women clothing shop in one city had exactly the same scene. So if in fashion was one coat, the whole entire city was wearing this coat in different colors. Because at that time in Soviet Union, in communist country, it was like a closed country. Nothing was accessible or able people buy abroad or go abroad. You're not able to go abroad. It was forbidden. It's not allowed. And if you have a jeans or something, then you like almost an enemy. People who was bringing some clothes from abroad, they call speculants, which is now you would call an entrepreneur. And I always love fashion because my mom always dressed really well, and my auntie, she used to make clothes, and we used to have a fashion magazine, Burda. This is why I developed love to fashion and the clothes, especially when you don't have beautiful clothes. So from age 13, I was making myself all the clothes, which was quite extraordinary, I think, now when I look back. But of course, cities like London and Paris was a center of fashion, and it was always inspirational. And I never really dreamed to be a designer in London. It was, although I always felt quite curious and open and adventurous to go and explore. And 22 years later now, being designing for Aspinal and creating all the Aspinal handbags and collection involved with the brand, it's quite a dream. Yeah, I'm really enjoying.
Well, I'd like to ask you in a moment about what Ukrainian elements of the fashion scene you bring to the current fashion house. But before I ask that, you were saying how your grandmother dressed very well, and yet you were in the Soviet Union at a time when people couldn't express themselves through the clothes they were buying on the stores. So how were people creative with the clothes that they did have? In what way were they able to express themselves individually, despite the limitations on what they could purchase from the official stores, as it were?
Yeah. Well, so you can buy a fabric and make your clothes. So when I was 13 years old, for example, we had these houses called pioneer houses, like clubs, where young children able to go and you learn how to sew, all kind of different dance clubs, all the different creative clubs, sport club. So you're able to make your own clothes. Then we also had shops which it was like commercial shops where people was able somehow, I don't know how, buy certain things from abroad and resell it. It was quite expensive, so you save it. You have to really save it a lot because the average salary was $100, $200 a month. So it's not a lot. So it was like very small shops, and if something appeared, you're like, oh my God, I want this. So it was quite extraordinary when I think back. And at that time also, like now you make me think about my school time. It was at that time we was growing during the Cold War with America. So boys and girls was trained how to survive atomic bomb if it dropped, how to put the gas mask. We had uniforms. We was trained as a soldier, how to shoot in a target. So it was like normal part of our education, which now I think like, it's not really normal. But we all was growing up in the fear of the America may send the atomic bomb. So that was our part of our childhood. But I did have the dream. I always love art and I love design. And I guess that's why when I with children, it's so important. I always ask, what's your dream? Because sometimes I feel children, especially when child growing up through all the school year, they need to always think about this, what their dreams to develop. It's one of the most important things in life. You have to dream who you want to become and what you want to do in life, because you're going to do it for the rest of your life. I feel it doesn't have to be even Ukrainian children. It can be so universal. It's children around the world. It's their dream to have family, to be safe and to be with their pets, or have big dreams like become whoever you want to be in life. Everything possible, nothing is impossible.
And you actually met your British husband in Ukraine, who went on to found Aspinal.
Yes, that's right. I met my husband-to-be at my fashion graduation. When I graduated, I did my diploma fashion graduation in Lviv, in Ukraine, at National Academy of Art. And end of the graduation, I presented my fashion collection, actually called Blue Angel, inspired by the unknown artists from 13th century, which is actually in National Gallery, which is bizarre. Anyway, so I met my husband during my fashion graduation. And yeah, sometimes it's strange things to say, but I do believe in things happen for the reason. It was perfect timing because I just graduated. And so I came to England and I joined Aspinal in 2006. So I joined as designer. My first design was Nokia phone case, believe me or not. But at that time, Aspinal was known for stationery, all beautifully made in England. And then it was just developing a little travel collection. And then, of course, been trained in pattern making and loved fashion. And I was blown minded when I was in London and all incredible designers and very inspiring. And I said, let's do handbags. And so I designed the first handbag collection. First handbag was Paris bag, and then it was Barbarella bag, second, and third one was Mayfair bag, which is currently is number one, our best-selling iconic bag, which is loved. Princess of Wales, I'm very proud wearing, and many beautiful ladies. And I always, when I see someone walking with Aspinal bag, I was like, I love your bag. So, I mean, it was incredible and privileged. I was able to live my dream and do what I love and evolve with the brand. And it was hard to work with husband as well. Well, it wasn't hard to start, but when you, with the years, it's much harder and challenges. But look, the handbags, our biggest growing category. We have scarves, we have jewelry, stationery, travel. So yeah, it's a dream job and my passion. And through all this creativity, I'm able to talk and create pieces. I can help Ukraine and would love to invite you to Aspinal St. James's flagship store. It's one of the most beautiful stores in London because it's inspired and built on our family home in West Sussex with a fireplace. So we created the feel and look like a home, a family home.
Oh, I'd love to come. Thank you very much. Well, as I've learned covering this war over the past 3.5 years, there's lots of interesting elements of Ukrainian fashion, particularly the different embroideries from the different parts of Ukraine and the patterns and everything that then are often seen in the Vyshyvanka, the national dress. But I know now that in Western fashion, elements of that have been adopted and used in contemporary styles here in London and in Paris and of course in New York and other places. So I wonder, when you reflect on what you brought over to London, what elements of Ukrainian mentality or specific patternations did you bring with you?
Well, yes. So actually, generally designing for Aspinal London and aesthetic is a refined English elegance, which we try to maintain for the brand. But if you notice, we have this bag. It's a trunk with a lion donoker. And it's very English feature, but actually lion in Ukrainian, my city, Lviv, it's translated as a lion. And we have a lion as a symbol of our city. Then I do a lot of creative work for Aspinal scarves, prints, also through my art and work for scarves. We also work with Olena Pinchuk Foundation. It's a privately owned Ukrainian foundation, and one of their initiatives is to have a mobile clinics with the doctors, and they go to all the rural places of Ukraine and test children and families for HIV. And I don't know if you know that unfortunately Ukraine is the second fastest growing country in Europe for HIV after Russia. I mean, Ukraine, the second biggest country in Europe after Russia. Plus you have the war, and that's a big problem. And we also work with Olena Pinchuk Foundation to support and talk about this initiative. So I created the scarf with abstract yellow sunflowers, which is symbol of Ukraine, with blue butterflies, which I always think about the children because it's symbol of hope, blue and yellow as well. And through this artwork, we wanted also to bring importance of the work the foundation does, because if the young person have on time the HIV treatment, so they have normal life. And also, most importantly, they don't infect other people. So, and I thought it's very important to talk through this art, through this work about this initiative. And again, through the sales of the scarf, we can support as well. So every year they buy more of the mobile clinics for their work.
It's a great cause. And as you say, the fashion house is known as an English brand fundamentally, but how has its connections with Ukraine and the amount of causes that it's supported for Ukraine been received by its clientele?
Yeah. Well, you know, since the full-scale war, it was such a shock. Everybody wanted to support and help. And the whole world, and especially England, and people, you know, been opening their homes and inviting families and children live in Ukraine. And it was incredible. Thank you so much again for everyone who supported and who continue to support, because it's still war, it's still terrible situation, and we don't know when the end. And with Aspinal being Ukrainian, being able to talk through art, through my work, being able to have this support, I was lucky to create these pieces and help whatever I can. Children, I think, again, education is the most important. Actually, last week I went to the film screening, created a film by Ukrainian director, and it was called Timestamp. And the whole entire film, it's all about education during war in Ukraine, in east of Ukraine. And it's been now 10 years. So the children who went to school at year 1, they graduating now. And it's showing their sort of education through different ages through the war. And of course it was sad and emotional, but it was interesting what I learned also. I didn't know that during this 10 years of war in Ukraine apparently the first country who developed the educational platform for children in Ukraine to continue educate the next generation. And so Ukraine building all the underground schools. So when the interrupted at normal school, they don't have to run in the basement, because as the movie was, the film director said, you don't need the atomic bomb to destroy the nation. You just need to not educated nation. If you don't have educated next generation, this is how the nation and the culture and tradition disappeared. And did you know also that the amount of Ukrainian school has been destroyed during this 10 years war in Ukraine, the same amount as during the Second World War as well in Ukraine. So I didn't know, though, education is the most important.
And what's next for you now that you've done all of these initiatives? And I wonder what the next phase for you is moving forward.
Ooh, good question. Yes, well, I mean, I still continue working with St. Mary's Ukrainian School and Olena Pinchuk Foundation, and through my art, through my work, bringing the children also. It's all about educating next generation, because these children, some of them will come back to rebuild the Ukraine, to rebuild the country after the war. And yes, so I mean, look, design, art, family, lots of happening, and always open and support any Ukrainian people. So we also have 2 families who we sponsor in here, as well as my own family, and it's never stopped. And through educated people, through doing this podcast, we need to don't forget that it's still war in Ukraine. People still live in this, unfortunately, reality for them and the children as well. So anything we can do to help children, support people, that's the goal, I guess.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Okay, now then, that is kind of us for today. So tomorrow, 24th, we've got a pre-record. We are then not producing anything on Christmas Day, Boxing Day. Then Saturday, Sunday, we'll be back next Monday. That's the next time we're all on the live. It might all change tomorrow. If there's breaking news, I will, of course, turn to and produce a live pod, but we're not expecting to at the moment. So I just want to leave you, if I may, so this will be the last time we speak before Christmas, with my final thought. Now, last Friday's podcast, which was the last one of the year with Adelaide, Francis and myself, we did a segment, you may remember, as if we were at a Christmas party, offering our thoughts on how to handle questions from friends and relations that you might meet over the festive season who haven't been following the war very closely, and sensing your interest might come out with some of the hardy perennials and come up to you and say, nothing's happening, is it? Or Russia's going to win, so why doesn't Ukraine just give up? All these kind of things. Anyway, so we answered some of these hardy perennials, and we did it to muted background sounds overlaid by the brilliant Sophie O'Sullivan of a party with glasses chinking, people chatting, etc., etc. Now, I mentioned this not only to plug the episode, but also because I was delighted to see in the comments, this is on Spotify, the comments, and we do read, as I say, we do read every email and the comments. I was delighted to see that we came under attack from bots again. So a couple of comments stuck out for me. One, from Roy. Now, Roy, clearly a British chap, or perhaps American, maybe Australian, but very definitely a human being called Roy, said, "Could you stop the annoying background music and chat, please?" Another contributor, again, clearly a human being, but going by the slightly odd name of 1211555289, said, "Why is there so much background noise of people talking? It's driving me nuts." So, what's happened here, folks, is that the pro-Russian trolls that want to bash us have set up automated responses just to comment all the time on our podcast. We get these emails, we see all the comments on YouTube, Spotify, all the rest of it. They want to flood the comment section with negative views to try to influence you, the real listeners, and convince you of an alternative narrative, or just to discredit us, or just to push the Russian line. The thing is, though, that these automated bots don't understand the context of that section, that we'd deliberately added background noise and chat because it was a party. Now, you knew that. A human would understand that, understand why there was background noise, but a bot wouldn't. So poor old Roy, I don't believe you're a human being, Roy. My message here, as a break for Christmas, is that the community that we've built gets bashed every day. So please don't feel you're alone in this criticism, and it's mostly not by humans. You are making a difference every day by staying engaged, keeping yourselves informed. The fact that people from the pro-Russian side of this thing have put so much effort into attacking us, and this time with bots who don't even know what a party is, but generally every day, means that we are upsetting the right people. And we together, that's you and us, are making a difference. So thank you to everyone who has sent us lovely messages in the run-up to Christmas, and thanks to everyone for listening, be it every day or once a week or now and then, whatever you can offer. Thank you. We will be back live on Monday, but from all of us here at Telly Towers, I wish you a very happy Christmas. Thanks, everyone. Ukraine the Latest is an original podcast from The Telegraph, created by David Nicholls. To support our work and stay on top of all of our Ukraine news, analysis and dispatches from the ground, please subscribe to The Telegraph. You can get 1 month free, then 2 months for just £1 at www.telegraph.co.uk/Ukraine the Latest. Deploying cutting-edge technology, we also release Ukrainian and Russian versions of this podcast. These translations retain our voices and delivery so that it can reach listeners in every region of Ukraine and those parts of Eastern Europe where Russian is still widely spoken. Links to those can be found in the podcast description to this episode. You can also now sign up to the new Ukraine the Latest weekly newsletter. Each week, Francis and I answer your questions, provide recommended reading, and give exclusive analysis and behind-the-scenes insights, plus maps of the front lines and diagrams of weapons, to complement our daily reporting. It's free for everyone, including non-subscribers. You can find the link to sign up in the descriptions for this episode. We regularly have a Ukraine live blog on our website where you can follow updates as they come in throughout the day, including insights from regular contributors to this podcast. We also do the same for other breaking international stories. If you appreciate our work, please consider following Ukraine the Latest on your preferred podcast app and leave us a review, as it really helps others find the show. Please also share it with those who may not be aware we exist. You can listen to this conversation live at 1 p.m. London time each weekday on X Spaces. Follow The Telegraph so that you don't miss it. You can also get in touch directly to ask questions or give comments by emailing ukrainepod@telegraph.co.uk. We continue to read every message. You can also contact us directly on X. You'll find our handles in the description for this episode. As ever, we're especially interested to hear where you're listening from around the world. Ukraine the Latest was today produced by Rachel Porter. Executive producers are Francis Dearnley, Louisa Wells and David Knowles.
My name is David Knowles. Thank you all for listening. Goodbye.